Hello and welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. E-commerce himself, Mr. James Davey.
Good afternoon.
And we're also joined by my co-host and good friend, Mr. Stokely Howard.
Hello, good afternoon to you both.
James, welcome and thank you for coming on. I appreciate Mr. E-commerce is a bold title there. But actually, when it comes to retail and e-com, there's very few that I've had a chance to meet that know as much about the industry as you do. So I'm keen to give the listeners a bit of an idea about your story in retail, what you've done, the brands you've worked for, and kind of bring us up to the 21st century.
Okay, so you obviously don't get out much and meet a lot of people, which I know is a lie, but that's beside the point. But thank you for the accolade. So I've probably been working in and within retail probably now for 25, 30 years with the ubiquitous change. If you live in Norfolk or Norwich, you have to work for an insurance brand at some point, which I did for a couple of years when I worked in the team at Aviva. But other than that, I've kind of been leading e-commerce teams for the likes of New Look, B&Q, and was multi-channel director of Joules Clothing for kind of 3.5 years during their kind of growth period. And they've continued to grow since then. And outside of that, have done things such as built mywardrobe.com, which was effectively the original basis for Net-a-Porter that they then proceeded to purchase, and had some great opportunities to build the likes of Wonderborough and Playtex's first website, and work with brands such as Debenhams and PC World when I was kind of agency side originally. So, I've kind of gone, as I say, gone from drills to dresses, and now kind of work with a load of different kind of a broad spectrum of retailers and very different sizes, anywhere from, 500,000 annual turnover up to, just shy of $1 billion, with the likes of the M Brown Group. So the guys that own Simply Be, Jacamo, JD Williams, etc. So, a vast array of different brands, and gives me a great deal of experience, but ultimately also gives me lots of challenges in terms of they all have very similar kind of challenges in the way they operate and that kind of stuff. So no, I love what I do. It's you've got to be passionate about selling if you want to kind of work in the world of online and retail. You've just got to enjoy the sell.
Absolutely. And I think the buying and the selling for the e-commerce and retail world has completely turned on its head now. With the world in turmoil, with COVID-19, James, and perhaps an imminent recession, what do you think this means for the high street as we know it, for not just specific demographics, but for everyone? What do you think this means for our typical high street?
So the high street has been through a number of recessions. From back in the 30s all the way through to modern time. And yes, we're being told that the recession coming is the one that, will be the deepest recession we've had since that period. So, I think the high street is in for quite a tumultuous time. And let's be honest, it has been for the last kind of 5 years or more, since 2008, when the financial crash happened and the banking crisis kind of pulled the rug out from underneath quite a lot of markets. The issue I think we have is that there is an acceleration into online adoption. But even then, the retail market is still looking like a 70% offline market. So there is still a lot of potential for high street brands to attract customers and bring them through their doors, both through their digital stores and through their physical stores as well, and through the likes of marketplaces, so they can reinforce their brand in multiple channels. So I think what we've got coming is a consolidation and a move to a slightly more agile approach for retailer. So you've got guys who can no longer sit on their laurels and ride on the back of the sheer volume of retail space they've got on the high street and the brands they've got under their doors in order to draw customers in. They've got to work so much harder to get that loyalty, which doesn't really exist anymore to a degree. That's my kind of argument. But there's also the piece they need to kind of keep that customer engaged with them throughout the process to keep them buying. And I think the consolidation piece for me is going to be the biggest bit. We're going to see a shrinking of the market and brands buying other brands. Let's be honest, Mike Ashley's still out there with a wallet. So there's going to be a few more brands that are going to go into his portfolio. But I think there will be some consolidation in the market, and it'll be those that will be able to stand up to a customer and go, this is what we do it well, and come and purvey, come and buy the products that we've got on offer at the right value, will be those that survive.
So James, obviously Mike Ashley will be listening, but also for the other retailers out there that are interested, we all appreciate we're about to enter a new normal, and I get that word's bandied around a lot, but what are the core ingredients that retailers and brands need to adapt to make sure they adopt and thrive as opposed to stay stagnant and die?
Okay. How long have we got for this? No, there's a few things there. One is, do not be complacent on the fact that you know who your customer is. Because ultimately you may think you know who your customer is, but ultimately that customer base will be made up of little microcosms of other different types of customer. So therefore, understanding those that have been with you since the day you were created and the reason why you created your brand will be really important, because you don't want to lose those. But you also have to understand how you're going to have to adapt either your product offering or your routes to market in order to start eating into other little clusters of customer that ultimately help you grow and help you survive through this period of time. So that's number one. Number two is make sure you have, I talk about three things: make money, save money, and drive efficiency. You've got to continually focus on the efficiency piece because without the efficiency, you cannot save money because you're just throwing people at a problem, and you won't make money because you won't retain customers because they're unable to receive the level of service they have. So a drive for efficiency, and that can be through platforms, that can be through software, that can be process, looking at what you've got to kind of drill those out. That's number two. Number three is to focus on the values of your brand and what it means to those customers. Because again, for many retailers, that brand comes from the product itself, but also the way you present yourself with your values. So therefore, focusing on price is going to be a challenge moving forward, because ultimately that's a race to the bottom. So therefore, how do you make sure your brand purveys values that match your customers? And with efficiency in the middle, you can make sure you deliver an exceptional quality of service to that customer. So those are kind of my usual rule of three, the three things I'd kind of look for.
I think I'm really excited because I know that some podcast people try and listen while they're doing something else, but I can absolutely imagine people trying to do something else and then be like, no, and getting the notepad out and just start scribbling. So we've got 45 minutes to give as much value as possible, and then Paulie will get a notepad out and start scribbling, because this man won't stop talking if we get him started.
Yeah, there is a problem with that, but there we go. So no, those are my kind of three kind of rules for coming out of the kind of, or going into the issue. There is one other little thing which is probably worth focusing on is don't believe that you can hunker down and not spend in this environment, because ultimately, irregards to whether you've got those three things nailed, build it and they will not come. That is the rules. You guys know it in terms of everything. One, from building, very high quality websites, you've got to drive traffic to, and, Stokely building engaging content that's there to drive traffic. You cannot stop spending in this environment. And it doesn't matter what you've got in the mix. You have to make sure that you both make money and save money at the same time. But to do that, you've got to spend a little as well.
Exactly right. So slightly digressing, James. I've heard you talk about the e-commerce excellent model before. So just for the listeners' sake, and we'd like to provide as much value as we possibly can to our listeners. What is this, and how is it broken down?
Yeah, sure. So every rubbish consultant needs a model of some degree to rely on over time. So I've probably got about 5 or 6. No, so this is kind of built up over kind of the years of trying to, engaging with, we do a lot of work with owner founders. So we actually pride ourselves on being able to work very, very closely with people that, create and found they're kind of e-commerce and retail businesses, because they're a certain type of beast. They're very dynamic, very driven, and also they're constantly looking for the next thing and the constant drive for improvement. So what I've done is kind of build 7 pillars. This is not rocket science. All it is just looking at, I like boxes so I can put things in, but it also means that for an owner founder and for a board of directors, it gives a very clear mantra in terms of, okay, where are we going to focus? The vital few. So it's 7 things, and it starts. So if you draw yourself a circle, and on the left-hand side of that circle, you're going to draw a bubble called Voice of the Customer. Now, that is everything from post-purchase reviews through to social commentary, through to sentiment analysis in terms of how does a customer think about you and your brand, and why do they not shop with you? So SurveyMonkey surveys are great for that, doing little pop-ups using tools such as Hotjar to ask them, how have you found your, how was your wash? Eddie Izzard classically says in his sketch, but are you happy with your wash? Are you happy with your experience on this site? So voice of the customer is really, really an important factor. On the complete opposite of that circle, draw yourself a bubble called operational excellence. Now, that is how you get stuff to the customer and how they engage with you on an operational level. Customer service, kind of the logistics piece, the warehousing element, the bit that actually makes the business work, because ultimately that is the first thing that the customer sees when they purchase from you for the first time, even down to the state of how's your packaging going to look. When you open it, think about some of the lifestyle brands such as, Joules, Boden, White Company, for example. Their packaging is pristine, and it is thought about almost as much as the product that they're buying itself, because that initial experience is exactly the same as the bit when you pick something off a rail, you go and try it on in the changing room, and then you walk out with that chemical reaction of endorphins and dopamine saying, I've had a fantastic shopping experience. So operational excellence is as important, if not, than anything else. So we go back round to voice of the customer and we go up a step. That is customer acquisition. What elements are you doing to draw customers into your brand for the first time, whether they are suspects or prospects, and what are you doing to turn them into a first-time buyer? We then, and that means looking at channels such as paid digital, looking at, catalog, for example, as an acquisition route. It's probably not advisable for most brands, but for some it really works, especially internationally. In the US, catalog is actually quite a good mechanism. So customer retention is that kind of drawing people in. You then move around to another blob called trading mentality. And that basically is making sure that you have a promotional plan, or more importantly, a marketing plan that derives, okay, we've got new products landing here, we've got a Easter promotion landing here, we've got Valentine's. That sounds so fundamental, but probably around about 50% of the brands we talk to, including some of the larger ones, do not have a joined up marketing plan. They'll have them siloed per department, and they may have a top line structure, but it doesn't go all the way down through the media to say, how are we talking about a campaign? Okay, so we've got voice of the customer, customer acquisition, trading mentality, operational excellence. We then move around into conversion rate optimization. How are we churning the best conversion rate we can out of that customer? And that has a balance on the type of people you're drawing in, the promotional activity you've got, but also how your site performs from a look, feel, and the call to action, and the kind of the customer feeling as though they're being wrapped up in warm cotton wool, that brand is going to give them exactly what they need from a product and a service perspective. And that means things such as A/B testing, using tools such as Hotjar or SessionCam or MouseFlow or UXCam or whatever it is to analyze people's physical journeys and trying to take out the friction, the pain points from that journey. And that can be putting in, we could spend hours talking about Crow, but it's getting the customer confident you're the right business. We then move around to customer retention, and that is a leaky bucket. The more businesses focus on customer acquisition rather than customer retention. So usually the first thing we do is do voice of the customer, operational excellence, and then customer retention, because actually operational excellence and voice of the customer are usually the bits that tell you that customers are leaving and why. So therefore fix it. Then thinking about how do you turn a first-time buyer into a second-time buyer, into a multi-buyer, into an advocate, into a VIP. So it's that chain of customer, automation, using remarketing through Facebook and Instagram, for example, using automation routines through email or SMS or in-app notifications, for example, to drive that behavior. But also thinking around how that fits with catalog, inserts, the whole kind of printed media piece. So it's wrapping that customer up into a journey. The bit in the middle is analytics and reporting, because without it, and knowing your KPIs and your goals, you have no idea, let alone how you got there, but when you get there. So you have to set those goals really clearly and know what they are. Set your KPIs to either 3, 5, or 7 things, usually 3 or 5. And therefore, you know that in 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months, you're hitting your goals and you're getting to where you need to be. And that really is the e-commerce excellence model. Really simple, 7 building blocks. And within each one, we usually go through the vital few, 3 things that meet those goals and 3 things that will change the behavior and nature of your e-commerce and retail business.
I love it. I think when Stokely and I started thinking about this podcast, to me, that last 5 minutes was exactly what I was thinking, how we can tap into some of the incredible minds that we know within our network that can share that kind of value. So thank you, James. That was awesome. So I'm really interested to know, certainly just before COVID, it seemed, and actually more so recently, we've seen the rise of these kind of niche brands. And I always talk about specialists rather than generalists. And actually, if you try and do too much for too many people, you end up doing nothing well. And we're all common with that concept. But what are your thoughts on niche brands? Do you think that's the way retail is heading, and is that the future?
I think niche brands are not a recent emergence, but what we have is people turning. So, you know, Stokely, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's an area you're particularly kind of conversant with, which is how do you target the millennial demographic and the channels in which they use. My understanding, because I'm certainly not one of them, is that what they're looking for is something special, something unique, something that fits with their lifestyle and their mentality, something that is not necessarily off the hanger. They almost feel as though it's a bespoke experience and something they can really buy into the values of that brand and that product. So niche brands do that really well, because you can look at anywhere from what am I being delivered at the moment so much? Coffee pods, brands that sell coffee pods, and the coffee is hand ground by nymphs in some woodland forest somewhere in Madagascar, and baked by a gnome somewhere under a tree with charcoal, whatever. It is they're adding a story to that brand, but it's very particular. And we've got brands, you know, Wilby's Bespoke, which is one of the brands we support. It's one of the smaller brands that we work with, but their growth is fantastic at the moment. We're seeing, multiple 100% of growth over the last kind of 12 weeks. They are niche in terms of they focus on women's handmade accessories, bags, clutch bags, etc. But they're handmade in the way that the cottage industry used to be. They're playing out that story of this is what we do well, and here are our wares, and this is the story behind the brand. I think where larger brands and houses of brands, so therefore department stores, struggle is that they only have one thing to talk about, and that is price. Or quite a few of them don't talk about service, they talk about price. And look, we've got this same brand that the other 4 department stores around us have got as well. Oh, brilliant, thanks very much. So I think we're seeing a splintering of new brands coming up that are, that's the great thing about recession. People stop working for a company for whatever reason, redundancy or exit or whatever, and they go and create something that they're really passionate about. And that tends to be smaller to start with. You don't start out, I want to build a new Debenhams. Okay, you might do, but they tend to start out with coffee pods. So I think we're seeing a fragmentation in that way, but that kind of counters my previous statement around consolidation. What I mean by that is I think we're going to have lots of challenger brands coming up through the wares. That means the guys that are in existence at the moment at the top have to consolidate and either buy, acquire, or merge in order to compete with the challenger brands that are coming through. I think we've got an interesting dynamic, and because niche brands tend to start digitally, they're going Amazon, they're going eBay, they're going Etsy, they're going etc. and direct to consumer via e-com, then I think that in itself is kind of fueling the online growth pattern as well. I don't know whether it's the future, but I think it's certainly a dynamic change.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, James. So despite the difficulties at the moment, the world of retail and e-commerce is currently open for disruption and change. Tell me if I'm wrong on that one, but where do you think the big opportunities lie to shake up the industry as we know it?
Interesting.
There's going to be many opportunities.
No. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's challenging to know where we'll end up. If I'm being completely honest, I think what we're seeing at the moment, where lots of people are saying there are opportunities, is in the world of subscription. I don't think it is a long-term opportunity, but I think it, in terms of what we traditionally call subscription. So you buy a month at a time, you get stuff delivered, you can cancel at any time. Yeah. I think we're seeing at the moment is, I think an opportunity is that we need to really focus on how we get the customer bought into our brands. And bought into the values of that brand and why it exists in its initial process. Go back to that really random coffee pod company. They want to get you engaged with unique, different roasts of products that you may not be able to get anywhere else. The opportunity comes from using data to mine who those customers are and presenting them with the right product and making sure you've always got stock of that product at the right price that they're going to buy for, which sounds like a holy grail, but I think the data is out there and it's used and it is mined by, take Tesco's and dumbhumby that came into existence, more than 20 years ago. They are probably the first example and the only example of the scale of that data that's available to them to use and mine. So I think data will be a big opportunity and has been for the last 10 years. I just don't believe many brands are actually still making best use of it. They're trying to use it for everything and going, how much data can we collect? Well, what's the point if you're not going to use it? Capture 2 things and use them. Don't capture 50 and then leave them in a box somewhere to rot, I think that's one opportunity. I think the other one is to spend some time taking the opportunity to build community, because that's something which this scenario at the moment is reteaching us as a group of people to do. And people are starting to put aside pure commercial reality and look at the wider aspects of building a community around their brand. And I think that is an opportunity that will not go away, whether some brands go by the wayside in terms of stop doing it purely because the commercial opportunity of doing it has disappeared. So COVID diminishes and actually, we don't need to do that anymore. Let's focus on pushing price and product again. I hope that's an opportunity that continues, because I think that's a great thing to do. And also I think it's the right thing to do. I don't know, what's your take on it? Do you have a view on what you think, what you're seeing as some of the opportunities coming out? Sorry to turn it on yourselves, but I like to ask the question because I have an opinion. It's very rarely right, let's be honest.
You always put yourself down. I think
there's
a massive opportunity for brands. We're seeing brands popping up, realizing the proposition is massively out of kilter. What was once fit for purpose. For me, in particular, we're seeing stores that were on that omni-channel approach. We just sell offline, particularly in luxury. They're all saying, actually, we only sell offline. We don't have an online proposition. They're realizing, actually, that's no longer fit for purpose and that's not going to work. And so for me, it's been really interesting to see how brands have had to quickly adapt and how some people have had to maybe swallow the pride's the wrong word, but they've had to go, Christ, actually, this isn't going to work doing what we've done. That old adage of, you've always done what you've always got, you'll always get what you've always got. I think that's how it goes. But essentially, I see a lot of opportunity around some of the luxury brands actually deciding, no, we do need to come online. Yeah. And I see a lot of people that are just selling bricks and mortar going, okay, yeah, we're going to have to do something different. It might not even be a website. You look at the arrival of the Facebook kind of shopping experience and the Instagram shopping experience. And actually with platforms such as Shopify and WordPress, WooCommerce, they're quite low entry, right? Anyone can kind of set them up. And actually that's really allowed a lot of brands to go, previously maybe a website was quite aspirational and it might cost you 10, 20K to get set up. It absolutely still will if you want it done properly, but you can start the journey much more cost effectively. And I think more brands will be doing that.
I think, and that starts the challenger brand conversation, because the cost to entry has now got to a point where, in fact, you can get an infinitely scalable platform in Shopify internationally, sitting in 85 data centers around the world, that gives you the capability to almost appear as you're on the doorstep of someone in Oregon. Which is incredible, which means you can start to build. I'm not saying international and Oregon is the right place to market, but somewhere to go. But I think that barrier to entry is huge. The other thing I think is the emergence of that younger generation with a very different mindset to shopping, and a very different mindset to commodity. And I think that's the social awareness piece that's coming through very strongly, whether that's mindfulness, whether that's kind of mental well-being, or whether that's kind of sustainability and the rise of plastic, lashback, if I can call it that. I think there's some interesting stuff going on, but it's going to be an interesting 5 years. I think we're going to see some very dominant brands disappear by the wayside, because Christmas will probably be not as big as they expect. And the last 3 months of the year are the only months that 90% of retailers make a profit.
I mean, it's staggering when you look at it like that, isn't it?
Crazy.
And that, I guess, takes us kind of nicely on to my next point, which was, I'm obviously at Quickfire, we're very lucky to work closely with the Armory, and can we almost have this information on tap and kind of access to yourself, and that's amazing. But actually, a lot of the people listening don't have that privilege. And so I'm become kind of known on the show to maybe ask the awkward questions or the difficult questions. I want to know from you, James, is you've had some great successes. You've done very well. You've worked with some massive brands. Are there any times you haven't got it right? And if so, what did you learn from those? Because sometimes that's where we can learn the most.
Oh God, I don't get it right, 50% of the time.
I knew you'd say that.
Yeah, but it's true though, because there's this amazing thing at the end of the journey, which is the customer. And we say, let's use data, let's mine the information, and we can get it probably right 60, 70% of the time. But there is that bit at the end that the customer will make the decision, am I going to buy into this or not? And that is really where they are at that split second, in that, am I going to pick this off the shelf? How much money have I got in my wallet? What am I doing this afternoon? Oh my God, my daughter's run off into the toy department. All those things are combined in that split second to determine whether they're going to shop with you or not. So we can't cater for that. Would I do things differently? Yes, always. I always look back, and I'm quite self-effacing, but I love what I do, and I really enjoy seeing success from brands. I wish I'd been slightly more dogmatic at times, which, knowing me, is quite a surprise. But with certain businesses I've worked in, being slightly more vocal over, I really don't think that's a good idea. Because what I'm seeing from what our customers are telling us, irregards to whether you think it's a good idea, they're telling us it's not. And I would probably want to have been a little bit more dogmatic around, actually, please just, I need to leave because this isn't the right business for me to work in. And there's been a couple of those. But what would I change? To be honest, I don't know. It's really difficult to put my finger on it. I think, which for me is really unusual, I'd prefer to say, here's 5 things I can change.
I think it feels like we're turning into Piers Morgan's life stories, and maybe this is our... But actually, yeah, it's interesting to say, like, let's step away from e-com for a sec. Like, there's all human beings, all of this stuff, and we're all learning as we go, and we're all learning new things, and we're all making mistakes. And if we are, then it's important we take the learnings to make sure we don't make that mistake again. So
I suppose getting a carrot, if I look at the ease, as in many industries, running agencies, the 3 of us have our own agencies, and it is incredibly stressful. Retail, there is a phrase that worms its way through retail: you are only as good as your last week or your last day of sales. And that is so true, that it becomes incredibly easy to get rolled up into that mentality of constant knee-jerk reaction, constant change, and the constant stress of wanting to deliver success. So therefore, it is an incredibly stressful environment. And so whether you're on the shop floor trying to work 12 to 14 hours to make a living on 0 hours contracts to support your family, all the way up to a managing director of a retailer that is trying to find out where his next couple of million are coming from to actually get product into store, or more importantly, pay the wages of his team. Because cash flow for a retailer is one of the hardest things to come by, because you literally have to sit on stacks of stock to sell in order to turn a proper profit. So I think for me, the biggest thing I'd change is probably to ease up a little bit. It's so easy to burn out in the industry, as I have, that I'm happy to say it, I've burnt out a couple of times. So, it is a case of being very cognizant of it is very easy to do that, and sit back and just reflect on what you can actually do.
James, without prizing into that too much,
yeah,
essentially burnout is something we've talked on the show quite a lot about. And obviously, Stokely and I, being slightly younger, sometimes put it down to, we'll be fine because we're younger, and that's actually sometimes not the case. Were there kind of symptoms of you burning out, or did it just one moment happen and all of a sudden it's too late?
No, it's I am a workaholic. My family will tell me, it's the first when you introduce myself at some events and stuff. Hi, James Davey, I'm a workaholic. I'm so yeah, exactly right. WA, whatever that is, we've created it. There we go. We've got a brand new spin-off. There is the evidence is there that you ultimately become significantly less effective, and you ultimately find yourself spending inordinate amount of hours trying to justify your outputs, and that is an indicative thing that's happening. And let's be honest, over the last 8 weeks running an agency, I've drifted into that, initially in the first couple of weeks, oh my God, I need to put in the hours in order to continue output. When in fact, sometimes a moment of reflection to then write down the next 3 things is a very good idea. The hair loss is definitely an issue. So that was actually having come out of a very stressful kind of 9 months helping one of my brands through an investment. So we went for quite a sizable investment, and the 9 months of trying to pull that together, going through due diligence and maintaining a team of about 100 was quite stressful. And I stepped out of that business, and within 6 weeks, my hair started to fall out. So, and it's never recovered. It won't ever recover. And I'm not actually that bothered right now.
I was going to say, you're now looking phenomenal, JD. I wouldn't worry about that.
Apparently I look 30. Which one is lying, and I've never looked 30. Even when I was 25, I didn't look 30. But I looked 18. It was fine. But it's there are some definite signs, and it is every industry is hard to work in, but retail in particular, it crosses the boundaries of whichever level you work at.
Sure.
So James, as you said, we all run agencies, and I think the most important thing for me when this happened for our agency was ensuring that the relationship between us and our clients was solid, and we've kept all of our retainer clients throughout this process, which I think is a testament to the relationships that you have with them in the first place, right?
Yeah.
That they're willing to stick by you through this time, and you're willing to stick with them and help them even more. But you work with some larger brands than us. I mean, how does that relationship currently work between the Armoury and those organizations for you guys? How is it at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think there's one thing initially off the bat is size is irrelevant. A relationship with a person, which ultimately that's what you're doing in a business, whether it's one or multiple people, is irrelevant to the size of the business. They will often, the smaller the client can be far more demanding than the larger client, because ultimately the larger client sometimes gets drawn out into kind of, well, I work 9 to 5, I do whatever. They can be slightly more structured. But to be honest, the relationship we have with a number of our clients is incredibly close, because we work in a very different way than most agencies. Yes, we do the typical agency, there's a project, deliver it, thanks very much. But a lot of what we do is actually along the lines of what we call part-time directorships. So we actually step into those businesses as a quasi-director, e-commerce digital director, and we feel the pain that they do on a weekly, monthly basis. And we try to do the best that we can to build plans and then execute those plans as part of the team to get them to where they need to be. So the relationship, we're almost a client and an agency in one role, which is quite difficult to maintain sometimes. But, you know, for quite a few of the clients and the brands that we work with, it's the one thing we've found has one, kept us very focused on delivering great value for the clients, and two, always focusing on the thing that's going to give them the best return on investment, not the thing that's going to fill our pockets the most.
Yeah.
And I think our honesty over, you know, we have heart, which are our values. Honesty is a very key one of those, as is entrepreneurial mindset, as is transparency. So those kind of things are kind of three core elements of our values that keep us aligned to our clients. So, you know, we love the way we work. We're also slightly different, that we're incredibly commercial as a creative and strategy and marketing agency. We're not full service, and that's why we work with great partners like yourselves in terms of delivering stuff. But, you know, it is very much around, you know, we're not there just to make it look pretty. We're there to commercially deliver a difference for that client. So
James, putting it back from the armory for a second, we'll come on to those guys in a bit more detail shortly. For those listening that are retailers or head of e-com or working in e-commerce environments, I guess you've seen so many different retailers. I'm sure you see some retailers making the same mistake time and time and time again. I know how much you love your numbered lists. Do you think you could find us probably 5 pitfalls that you see time and time again that you say, if you're going to take anything from the last 30, 40 minutes, these are the things, just go and sanity check in your business and make sure you're not making that same mistake?
Right, here goes. Okay, so I will always come back to customer mindset. So you need to absolutely know who your customer is, not who you think they are. And every retailer does it, and every retailer still does it. I've had 2 conversations in the last week where the brand on the other side of the call has said, well, I know exactly who my customer is. I can tell you that tomorrow. Okay, great. That's who you think your customer is. Are they all buying? No. Are some of them you really want to go after not buying? Yes, they are. So therefore, it's a case of really understand who they are. And that can be done in a number of different ways. It's very difficult to do it right now, but I do what's called bag watching. I've been asked to leave a store a couple of times for doing it, because the best place.
I can imagine you full camo, newspaper over your head, just peering like.
Yeah, excuse me, sir. What are you doing, Andy? Can you move on? You sit outside a store that you want to understand more about their customers, and what you do is you look at customers walking in with bags. What brands are they carrying? And how many of those walk out with a bag from the store you're looking at? Because that tends to suggest who the affinity of the brands are. And what that means is the brand you're talking to or you're working for starts to understand that actually walking into a jewel shop, they're also carrying a Wilko bag, and they're also potentially carrying a TK Maxx bag. So there is a competitor set there somewhere in their family that you are competing against those particular brands, potentially in the same category. So knowing your customer and where they shop and how they shop is incredibly important. So that's number 1. Number 2 is understand your channel mix. So you can't put all your eggs into one basket. If you are like most brands at the moment we're talking to, we're really good at working with wholesale brands, those that are traditionally sold only into stockists, because they're really afraid. Luxury is a perfect example. They only have the wholesale and the retail sector to sell through. They don't tend to sell direct. They don't tend to sell through marketplaces or other channels. So, you know, working with brands that are really worried about going direct to consumer and what it will mean for their stockists, the retailers stocking their brands, is an area where I think we do excel because we understand it. And so it's coming back to that, what could be my channel mix? Do I have too much in one channel? Am I using marketplaces effectively? Am I understanding how people can click and collect, or in America they call curbside pickup? How can I make local delivery work? Do I use a courier? Do I use one of our own team in a van or on a bike with a little basket on the front because it fits with our branding? You know, it's for food and beverage. It works really nicely. But there is that bit of, understand your channel mix and really understand how many of those customers shop across your channels, because I can guarantee 1/3 of them, if you have more than one channel, will be shopping across multiples, and they will have the best lifetime value. Really understand how you drive your channel mix. 3, know some core basic fundamental metrics. What is your margin? The number of times I say, well, how much margin do you make on a product? Well, it's kind of about 30-ish%, 50%. Bloody know it. Look, it's what makes you your profit. How much of your how much of your revenue is taken up by marketing? So what I call a cost to sale ratio. What percentage of your top line revenue is being absorbed by your marketing? And basically, is that making you unprofitable? What is your conversion rate? We all talk about conversion rates, but actually, there are two conversion rates. There is one which is always used, which is visitor to sale, but actually one that is very rarely always talked about, which is basket to sale. Because ultimately, one of the biggest friction points you have in any checkout process or any part of your journey is actually in that last journey of, I've added it to a basket. My God, I've got it in a basket. I'm walking around a store towards a till, and I just drop my basket and walk out the front door. There's got to be a reason why that happens. So many people focus on conversion rate optimization at the front, clicks and messaging and colors and layout and all that kind of stuff. If you have got a till that doesn't work or doesn't have batteries, isn't plugged into the mains in a retail store, you're never going to take any money. So, for me, it's about making sure you get that last part of the conversion rate sorted. So that's my third metric. The fourth one is cost per acquisition. Comes into cost of sale, but how much does it cost for me to buy a customer? And the last one is lifetime value, not 2 years, 3 years, but for many retailers, how much is a customer worth to me in 12 months? So therefore I can work out, is it ever going to be profitable? Or do I have to buy a customer for 2 years or 3 years before I start to return a profit? And if you are, you're in insurance. Because that's how long it takes to earn a profit off an insurance customer nowadays. So that's number 3, know your KPIs. Number 4 is build the best team you can. If you can't afford the best person, find a way of affording that best person. Because ultimately, settling for someone who kind of knows what they're doing will cost you 3 times as much in the long run. If that means, and that's where we as part-time directors jump in. So therefore we have myself and we've got a number of associates that work with us, and Ben in our team as well, one of the ex kind of co-founders of Naked Wines. He knows what he's doing in terms of working with board members. We can step in on a part-time basis to help fill the gap whilst they find that right person that can effectively do us out of a job, because that is what we want to do. So always try and afford the best people you can. The last thing is, don't rely on your gut feel. Use it, don't rely on it. So it comes back to my point of, I have an opinion, I'm very rarely right. And it comes back to that very first thing of know your customer. Because ultimately a gut feel for an owner founder is going to seem like the most important thing in their life. It's the thing that will dynamically change their business. I've had a conversation with one of my previous owner founders about, do you think we could sell chickens online? Okay, is that your gut feel? Do our customers want to buy chickens? How are we going to store them in the warehouse? Do we have an announcement that goes, cockerel loose on aisle 5? I don't know, but there are practicalities, but don't rely on your gut feel. It's incredibly important as an owner founder to know how you feel about something, but do turn and ask your customers whether in fact it matches what they want as well. Does that help?
Have you finished dribbling if you're listening? This is unbelievable.
If you're a retailer right now, I mean, this is the episode to listen to, right?
I can say a load of stuff and it's great. The bit that's really important is, we can talk about this all day. The difficulty is putting it into action. And as most retailers, having the ability to step back for 10 minutes and go, what is going to make the difference? I've got 50 things on my to-do list. I need to make it 3. I need to be able to tell my boss, my CEO, my director, there are 3 things. I've got capacity to do 3 things. They will change your business tomorrow if I can focus on those 3 things. Help me find out what they are. Or I need to tell you as my team the 3 things that are going to make a difference to our business. And it's very easy to say that. It's incredibly difficult to do it.
Absolutely. James, so much value. It's insane how much I've learned in the last 10 minutes from from your 5 key things for retailers.
Yeah, the first 40 minutes was garbage, JD, but after that...
Thanks, mate. I'd like to improve throughout a session.
Absolutely rubbish. No point listening to the first 40 minutes. Just skip to 40 minutes in. Thank you so much. I want to end with this. My experience of knowing you guys, you're one of the most well-respected and fastest growing creative agencies in the East of England, hands down. Why is that?
It comes down to the team we have. Turning out video creative that is engaging and powerful and draws people in. Nathan, building websites day in, day out, and digital platforms that help sell and drive leads for businesses. You're only as good as the team you have behind you. The last 8 weeks have been very challenging for agencies in terms of how do you keep those teams and how do you kind of nurture them through this time. And, it has been a challenge for all of us, but I think we're getting there, and we're now coming out the other side a much stronger agency, actually, really knowing where we should focus and really knowing who we should work with. And that is brands that have a vision, they have a brand, and we're really proud of the product that they have, because it then means we can sell it, and we can help them sell it. So I think the team is the biggest thing. Our experience helps, but to be quite honest, we just enjoy what we do, and we want to make sure that clients are happy and the customer at the end of the day buys from a fantastically designed piece of packaging or a great brand identity or an amazing website creative. It's very simple, really, from my perspective.
And I think from just to wrap up now, in terms of a personal point of view, I think it's very important that both LT, which is Lee Turner, Lee Scarf, and yourself always do yourself a massive disjustice. I absolutely agree that the team are phenomenal and everything else, but the guidance and even the mentorship, the stuff that the listeners won't see, particularly from a personal point of view, the messages late at night to ask how we're getting on to support partners, stuff like that. I can't tell you how valuable that's been and how much appreciated that is. So a massive, massive thank you for that. The guidance you've given me over the past 18 months, 2 years has been phenomenal, and I've loved every minute. And it's been lovely to have you on today and to kind of share some of that wisdom. So thank you.
Well, likewise, we are a community of agencies that bizarrely in this part of the country are actually quite engaged with each other. And there are a select few of us that are not so precious about sharing and not so precious about working alongside each other in a very collaborative way. And, likewise, messages coming back from you saying, how are you doing today? First thing, are you having a good day? And it's like, I don't know yet, actually. I'm only on my 3rd cup of coffee. Maybe I need to hit the jar again and see what happens.
It's only 5 a.m, so leave me alone.
Oh, well, 4 hours sleep, that's what happens. Guys, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to kind of just share some thoughts. So.
It's really exciting. I can't wait to hear this episode go live. Look after yourselves. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you found it valuable, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.
Take care, guys. Thanks.